Chapter 22. The trip home was spent in stunned silence. Neither of them knew what to say to the other, and so no one said anything. At the mansion, Keith let Maggie out and made some lame excuse about needing to check on things at the stables. She too had things to do, and so they went their separate ways. The rest of the week was pretty much living that 1 hour over and over again. There was the shock of it, followed by the numbness. Maggie did her best to be normal around the kids, but it wasn't easy. She wondered how he was doing, and she even thought about calling to check. But she always talked herself out of it. If he was doing half as bad as she was, talking to her would just confirm that it had actually happened. And somehow making believe it hadn't seemed easier. "For someone leaving for a 4-day party, you look like death warmed over," Ike said on Thursday evening. "You okay?" Okay? It was such a strange word. How could you ever tell you were okay? Maybe others could, but your real thoughts and feelings were so unreliable. How could you ever be sure? Keith's thoughts swept him away from the conversation so fast he didn't realize he hadn't answered. With a concerned look, Ike swung onto the chair. "Is everything all right?" Keith looked at him as the emotions threatened to break through the numbness. Vehemently, he pushed them back. "What do you remember about the accident?" "Accident?" Ike looked like he'd driven around a blind corner. "What accident?" "Mom's. When she was killed. What do you know about it?" The horrified look on Ike's face barely registered in Keith's fuzzy brain. "Why?" "Because I want to know, that's why. I've never really known. One day she was here, and then she wasn't. Nobody ever told me what really happened." Ike got up and went to the filing cabinet. "Well, it was a long time ago. I don't really remember all the details." "Then give me the rough outline, Ike. Come on, I'm 29. I'm not a child anymore." "Well, I don't know that anyone really knows what happened. It was it wasn't real clear. There was a crash, and she went through the windshield. That's all we were ever really told." Keith's grief gripped him. "Yeah, but what did she hit? A tree? A sign? Another car?" "I don't think she hit anything. I think it just happened." This was a one-way trip down a blind alley. Ike came back to the desk. "Listen, Keith, it was a long time ago, and stuff like that is better just put to rest and left alone. There's nothing you can do about it now except accept it and move on." Keith wanted to lash out, to take his anger and grief out on Ike, but that wasn't fair. Ike had pulled him through like no one else had, and there was no reason for Ike to lie. If he didn't know, he didn't know. Keith wrenched himself out of the chair and stalked to the office door. "I'm going to make rounds, and then I'm going to pack for Vermont. I'll be back Tuesday." "Have a safe trip." Greg called again on Friday, and again Maggie told him no. She knew Keith was already gone. The whole house was buzzing with the anticipation of Dallas's graduation and their imminent arrival on Monday. Monday. It seemed to occupy a space in a parallel universe, one in which he was again attached to Dallas's side, and Maggie was left to occupy the little infinitesimal space she called life. Dear God, please get me through Monday, and the Tuesday after that, and the Wednesday after that. "Dallas Celeste Henderson," the speaker at the podium read, and with that, Keith watched her stride across the stage and accept first her diploma and then the hood of her new vaunted position in life. He clapped politely, just like her parents did beside him. They had all apparently decided to leave the unpleasantries until after Dallas's victorious walk. Tomorrow they would argue. Today they would celebrate. "This is Keith Ayer, my fiancé," Dallas purred as they made their way around the well-appointed restaurant. "He's Conrad Ayer's son." "Oh," several of their prey said. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Ayer." Keith smiled, hoping he looked happy about the connection Dallas was so fond of making. They got to the refreshment table after a walk that would have left a camel dehydrated, and Dallas took a flute of champagne and handed him one. However, Keith held up his hand. "No thanks." "No thanks," Dallas laughed. "What does that mean?" "It means I don't really want to drink right now." "Yeah, right." She pressed the glass into his hand. "For later." He'd watered 3 flowering plants and 2 green ones, hoping it wouldn't kill them. If Dallas kept this up, he'd have the whole place watered by the time they left. They'd been at this party for 3 hours, and it was getting boring making small talk with people who cared nothing for him except because of his family's money. Nonetheless, he followed her around like a good little puppy dog until his feet ached from the monkey shoes he'd had to wear. "You know, I'm really beat," he said as the clock slid toward 11. "What do you say we go back to the hotel?" "Oh," Dallas slipped her arms around his neck. "Now there's an idea." Being with Dallas was like taking a turn on a stuck CD. She had 2 modes, sex and money. And then every so often he got really lucky and she turned on the power mode. How she couldn't wait to be at Hayden and Elliott. How she planned to make Junior partner before 28. How with his money and her family's connections, she was destined for full partnership before 32. It was only a question of if she would stay that long. By the time they landed in Houston, Keith had never been so happy to get off a plane in his life. Although he had brought his pickup, Dallas insisted on the mansion sending the limo to get them. So Jeffrey had come for the pickup, and they rode in the limo. The rest of her stuff was being shipped to a storage building until they found a place of their own, which, considering that house hunting started tomorrow, was only a matter of time. "I'm so happy to be home." Dallas lifted Keith's hand, which was intertwined with hers, and arched it over her shoulder. "This is too good to be true." "Yeah," he said, trying to be enthusiastic, but not even getting close. When they drove into the gates of the estate, Dallas just about squirmed out of her skin with excitement. However, the second the driver slid past the main circle, the squirming stopped. She sat up incredulously. "Why aren't we stopping? Where is he going?" "To the guest house, Dallas. Where you're staying, remember?" "Well, yeah, but I thought we'd stop at the mansion first to, say hello." Keith laughed softly. "No one's home." His thoughts went to one who probably was, but he yanked that thought back. "No one? Not even the staff?" He lifted his eyebrows. "You want to say hello to the staff?" She caught herself then and leaned back petulantly. "Fine, we'll go to the guest house." "The square footage is $27.50, the agent said as she led them through the 3rd house on Tuesday afternoon. They were all pretentious, all way over what they needed, and all meant only to impress anyone who happened to be impressible. "That's a little too small," Dallas said, folding her arms unconvinced. "Yes, but it does have a pool and a library." "Well," Dallas said as Keith followed her around the vaulted entryway with a crystal chandelier hanging high above. "It's okay, Miss Henderson. I have lots more properties to see." "Then let's keep looking." If there was a house they missed, Keith's feet wouldn't have believed it. The next morning, as he stuck them in his cowboy boots, they groaned. However, he had chores to do, work. Good, honest work, and he wasn't going to let some little triviality like his feet feeling like they were about to fall off keep him from it. "Are you leaving already?" Dallas asked, coming from the hallway, her silk robe tied just so around her body. Gotta get cracking. He stood and put on his hat over his bandana. She wrapped her arms over themselves like an angry teacher. Ugh, do you have to wear that ugly thing? It's disgusting. I'm working in the stables. The horses wouldn't be impressed with a coat and tie anyway. With a shake of her head, her scowl deepened. We've got to find you something else. If I have to look at that thing every day of my life, just shoot me now. It was a thought. However, he shoved that thought down. I'll be back for dinner. We've got to get Dragnet ready to go for tomorrow. Dinner? Dallas sat down at the table petulantly. But I thought we were going to take a mini vacation. No, I said you are going to take a mini vacation. You've got all day to yourself. He kissed her on the forehead. Help yourself to anything you need. I'll see you later. Yeah, later. And there wasn't an ounce of happiness anywhere in the words. I don't know, Ike said, striding into the office. Paul's got drag on the track, and he's about as jumpy as a June bug. I don't know how he'll fly at the race Saturday. Pulling him's not an option? Tanner asked with concern. Ike looked at Keith, who sat at the desk, trying not to listen. I talked to Mr. Ayer last week, and he's adamant that we're racing him. Ike put up his hands. I've done all I can do. Like clockwork, Greg called on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Maggie hadn't seen Keith in so long, it was almost possible to make herself believe he really was just a nice dream. However, the pit of "this isn't what I want" stayed with her each time she talked to Greg. Friday night, Greg said. Come on, Maggie, why don't you just ask off? It can't be that hard. She put her head in her hand and dragged her fingers through her hair. Greg, we've been over this. They haven't hired anyone new, and I can't just leave. Even for one night? Even for 1 minute. Dallas was out shopping, again. Keith wondered how there could be that many things to buy in all of Houston. She'd already bought new sheets for his bed, which she didn't even plan to take with them, new kitchen towels, new bathroom towels, and 2 new pillows that were on the couch, but not to be touched nor sat on. He'd found that out the hard way. Grateful for a small reprieve from her omnipresence, Keith turned on the satellite radio in the living room Saturday afternoon and sat down in the recliner. With a remote control, he flipped through the channels until the race came in, so clear it was like he was at the track. We're here at the 3rd race at Fair Meadows. The announcer went through the lineup of horses, and when Dragnet's name was called second, Keith sat forward. Elbows on his knees, he tapped his lips with his index fingers. Come on, Paul. Just take it easy on him and get through this race. We can concentrate on winning the next one. Seconds slid by as the track personnel went through their race start protocol. Keith was glad he hadn't gone. Race day always raised his nerves. Traveling frayed them even further. Being around that many people and having to act like an owner rather than a trainer really was impossible. He hated the way people looked at him when they knew who he was. No, this was better, sitting here listening. Alone and anonymous was much, much better. The horses are in the gate. Oh, number 2 seems a bit jumpy today. Settle down, Drag. Just settle down. Calm him down, Paul, and get through this. Looks like they're working with him. A minute slid by. Okay, I believe we are set. The horses are in their gate, and they're off. Keith sat forward, coaching Paul as if he could really see him. Come on, come on. To the first turn we go. The announcer slid through the horses' names. Dragnet in 4th. The pounding of the hooves was so ingrained in Keith, he heard them in his brain even if he couldn't really hear them on the radio. Dragnet seems to be making an inside move. Yes, he has overtaken Melody's Dream on the inside corner. As they round the final turn, oh no. Keith nearly fell off the chair. What? Oh no, 2 of the horses got tangled underneath. It looks like Dragnet and Mustafar are down at the inside railing on the last turn. And Melody's Dream wins the 3rd race at Fairmeadows. Troubadour 2nd, and Walesland 3rd. Keith launched out of the chair and stalked over to the entertainment center where he put his hands on the wood on either side of the stereo. What about Dragnet? What happened to Dragnet? Oh, good. Good news. Mustafar has regained his footing and is being escorted from the track. What about Dragnet? The frustration flowed through him like lava from a volcano. Another announcer took over. This looks really serious for the Ayer Stables horse Dragnet. He's still down on the track. The trainer and medical team are on the track as well. Everyone in the stands is on their feet, and it's clear to everyone this does not look good. Keith slammed his hand into the entertainment center. I knew it! The most gut-wrenching minutes of his life passed as Keith placed phone call after phone call to Ike with no luck. He knew the trainer was knee-deep in chaos, so after 10 tries, he resorted to sitting on the couch with his hands clasped on his knees, praying. Finally, nearly an hour after the race started, his phone rang. His gaze swept over the ID as he hit the on button. Is he all right? Ike sighed so hard it yanked Keith's spirit all the way down. It's bad, Keith. I've never seen one shattered like that. What happened? Where are you? How is he? The vet's here. They're fixing to put him down. Down? Keith vaulted off the couch. No, Ike, no, don't do that. Again, Ike sighed. Too late. I already talked to your dad. The words took Keith's knees out from under him. He approved? He suggested it. Ike sighed again. The vet said it would take a miracle for him to even live, much less to ever really walk again. For his own sake, Keith backed up from the story to keep from thinking about what was happening now. What happened anyway? I couldn't really tell from the radio. I don't know. They were rounding the last turn, and they got tangled. Dragnet's front right leg shattered in the process. I'm telling you, man, it's bad. Clinging to rational, Keith sorted through the accident. How's Paul? Emergency room, too. But he's okay. A little banged up and shaken up, but he'll be all right. And Drag? Ike was talking to someone else, and Keith wanted to shake him silly to get him to stop and fill him in on the details. It's a done deal, Ike said after a moment of pause. He's gone. Even Ike had to corral the emotions to be able to continue. Listen, I've got to get. I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll figure out what's next. Yeah. Okay, bye. Keith hung up the phone without really seeing it. Dragnet was gone, just like that. And now he was never coming back. Grief jammed into Keith's throat, followed in the next breath by anger. Surely there was something someone could have done. Who makes a snap decision about a $250,000 horse like that? His thoughts smashed through the image of his father, and he yanked himself off the couch, grabbed his hat from the table, and stalked out. I'm hungry, Peter said after Isabella was asleep Saturday afternoon. Most days during this time, they simply played in the next room until she woke up. But today, even Maggie was getting claustrophobic. She wished they could go out to the stables and go riding, but with Dallas back, Maggie didn't have the guts to show her face anywhere she might be compared to the goddess. Well, let's go down and see what we can find. She took Peter's hand, and they trooped down to the kitchen. Inez was off shopping, and Patty Ann and Mrs. Ayer had gone to a luncheon for some organization Maggie couldn't even pronounce. How about a ham sandwich? Her gaze caught on the blender, and she smiled, although the memory stabbed into her heart.
Can I have peanut butter and jelly?
Peter climbed up the stool by the counter. Peanut butter and jelly? Maggie was surprised he'd even heard the term. Sure, if I can find some.
We used to have those with Mrs. Ortega before she got in trouble and left.
Maggie opened the refrigerator. Why'd she get into trouble? Peter shrugged.
For being in Mom's room. We used to go in there a lot.
The story was beginning to bring real curiosity to Maggie. Oh, why?
So she could play dress-up with Mommy's earrings and stuff?
Mom... But she didn't get that question out as the front door slammed with an earth-shaking crash. Fear pummeled into her. No one just walked in unannounced like that, especially not with a foundation-cracking door slam for emphasis. Peter, you stay right there. Wiping her hands on her pants, she went to the door and turned the corner to the foyer where she met Keith, coming the other direction, full steam. Is my father here? He looked like he might bulldoze anyone who stood in his way. No, I don't think so. He's gone until Monday, I think, Maggie said, shaken by the sight of Keith, who looked more out of control than she had ever seen him. That figures. He glanced over his shoulder. You're sure he's not here? You can go check if you want, but... A scowl marred his face. It was almost as if he wasn't even really seeing her when he looked at her. I do not believe this. This... what? What happened? He glanced at her as anger flashed through his eyes. My sorry excuse for a father told them to put Dragnet down without even consulting me. It was serious. That much she understood, but not much more. Hold on, who's Dragnet? The horse we had racing today at Fair Meadows. Keith seemed not to be able to contain the rage as his body rocked side to side with its power. He went down around one of the turns, shattered his foreleg, and my brilliant father told them to just put him down. His fist came up and then dropped to his thigh. They didn't even bother to call me before they made the decision. It wasn't so much the news as how he was taking it that knocked into Maggie. She tilted her head to be able to see his face, which was bowed. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? He reached up and readjusted his hat, clearly fighting not to let any emotion other than rage find the surface. Yeah, can you get me a new father? She hated seeing him in such turmoil, and her voice became soft with compassion. I wish I could. She shouldn't, she knew, but it was all she could think to do. With only a step toward him, she slid her arms through his. At first he seemed surprised, but then he bent his head onto her shoulder and clasped his arms around her so tightly she wondered if she would ever breathe again. Gently she rubbed his back with her hand. It was a funeral hug, just like the kind Mrs. Malinowski had taught her to give. The kind where you don't let go until the hurting person does. And so she stood there in the middle of the Ayer mansion foyer, holding Keith, for no other reason than that he hadn't yet let go. Finally his grip released, and he stepped back. There were no tears, but anguish slashed across his face just the same. Do you know when he'll be back? I think Patty Ann said Monday. Maggie wished with everything in her that she could do something to ease the pain searing across his face. Then I guess I'll be back Monday. She followed him to the door. Are you going to be okay? Sad acceptance slid through the ache. Do I have a choice? And with that, he left. This has been Deep in the Heart, written by Staci Stallings. Narrated by Becky Dowdy of Brave Hearts Audiobook Productions. Copyright 2010 by Staci Stallings. Production copyright 2014 by Staci Stallings.
Like and subscribe to the Staci Stallings YouTube channel so you never miss a second of the story.